let's just talk about the broader issue of the climate religion. Here's the thing. Really wake up to this. It has nothing to do with the climate. Okay, if it did, the people who are calling for the U.S. to stop production here should be really concerned if PetroChina is picking up those projects because you know what? Methane leakage, which even if you subscribe to this religion, is 80 times worse for global warming than is even a unit of carbon dioxide. They don't talk about that. They just talk about carbon emissions. Methane leakage is worse in China than it is here. So if you really cared about supposedly even the core tenet of your religion, your God, the climate, you would have cared about shifting that production to places like China because the projects are still proceeding, but they don't. So that's clue number one. Here's clue number two. If you really cared that much about so-called carbon emissions, you would be a proponent of nuclear energy. And yet this ESG movement, Vanguard's ESG funds, for example, exclude nuclear energy companies from their ESG funds. The ESG movement is hostile to nuclear energy. What's going on there? That's the second clue, okay? The problem with nuclear energy for this movement is not that it is too bad, but that it might be too good at solving their own, in my opinion, mostly made up problem. And so what does that tell you? The E in the ESG is really just a Trojan horse for the S, the social prong. The environmental prong is really just a Trojan horse, a vehicle, a vector for the social prong, where what this is about is global equity. It is about making the West and America in particular repay its sins of the past for having achieved greatness and its exceptionalist status and its success. Because what is this about? If they would have loved nuclear energy, but the problem with nuclear energy is that might just allow nations like America to continue to power themselves independently into the future. No, 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 that's not what this agenda is about. This agenda is about shackling the West, shackling America in particular, so that the rest of the world can so-called catch up. And you know who's using that to advance their objective? You guessed it, none other than the CCP, who's laughing at us and the Baitsuo, in their language, the useful idiot left in the United States to laugh their way to the top because in these so-called climate negotiations, they still, this is staggering, they still claim developing nation status. This is a foreign power that has a bigger navy than we do, that's flying spy balloons over sovereign U.S. territory without real punity for it to pay, an economy that we're dependent on, and yet in the climate negotiations with John Kerry or somebody else, they claim developing nation status. This is laughable, and that's because that's what the whole agenda was about. Climate change and the climate change movement has nothing to do with the climate. It has everything to do with global equity. And that is the religious fixation that could be the downfall of this country unless we wake up to that and fill our hunger for religion, our hunger for a belief in a higher power with something that is more meaningful, like, say, American identity itself, which is what I spend my waking hours trying to get this country to wake up to.